Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into what is honestly a profound, super practical guide for dealing with life's hardest trials. Specifically, we're going to tackle one of the most exhausting habits of the human mind, which is our desperate need for external validation. We're going to explore exactly how to release our dependence on everyone else's opinion and instead connect deeply to our true inner identity. It's an incredible roadmap drawn from some really fascinating psychological and spiritual source material. I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. Why does someone else's opinion of us have the power to just completely ruin our day? You know the feeling. You could be having a fantastic morning, but then you get one sideways glance, one unreturned text message, or a tiny critical comment, and suddenly your stomach just drops. We've all been there, right? It's a deeply relatable, very real psychological pain. But why does it hit us so incredibly hard? Well, to get to the bottom of this, we need to introduce a specific part of our psychology. It's called the surviving child. This is basically the highly anxious part of our natural psychology. It's the part of us that mistakenly believes our very existence, our fundamental value as a human being, depends entirely on the approval of the people around us. We actually develop this dependency right from infancy. And the shocking truth, most of us carry this completely unchecked straight into adulthood. Because to the surviving child, being alone literally feels like dying. And that isn't just dramatic poetry, okay? It's exactly how this part of our brain processes the world. Think about a newborn baby. A baby is 100% physically dependent on its caretakers just to survive. So any kind of social rejection or isolation triggers this massive primal fear within us. The subconscious mind basically equates isolation with a literal threat to our survival. When someone ignores you, the surviving child inside you actually feels like its life is on the line. All right, let's move to part one, the illusion of dependence. So how do we break this mirage? Well, first, we have to understand how this cycle of false dependence actually works. It goes like this. First, as we said, we're born physically dependent. Second, we practice this dependence 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as kids. Every smile from a parent means we're safe, every frown means danger. Third, because we practice this so much, we form a deep core belief that our values simply equals external approval. And then comes the tragic final step. We mistake this childhood survival mechanism for our true adult identity. We inadvertently train ourselves to believe that without the applause or acceptance of others, we have absolutely zero worth. Ultimately, we're left with a choice between two ways of living. On one hand, you've got external reliance. This is trusting in human institutions, politicians, or shifting global forces for your safety and peace of mind. Whether we're looking to international alliances or just our immediate friend groups, relying on these shifting sands pretty much guarantees anxiety. On the other hand, you have internal security. This means trusting in the unchanging inner essence within us that cannot be shaken by world events or by people's opinions. Just like we shouldn't rely on the unpredictable winds of global geopolitics for our ultimate security, we absolutely should not rely on the fragile opinions of our peers for our self-worth. Which brings us to part two, the King's Palace, seeking the essence. To really drive this home, the source material gives us this incredibly vivid metaphor. Imagine a king who invites both the richest man and the poorest man in the country to his royal palace. Now, the rich man, who really understands fine art and architecture, he walks in and is immediately mesmerized. He wanders from hallway to hallway, completely distracted by all the beautiful external art, to the point that he literally forgets about the king. But the poor man, he doesn't know anything about fine art. He isn't distracted by the dazzling exterior. So he walks straight past it all, directly into the inner chamber to meet the king himself. The big realization here is that the beautiful external distractions actually hide the true inner essence. When we get obsessed with the quote-unquote art of life, meaning the external validation, the compliments, the social status, crafting the perfect image, we get completely blinded. The more we chase these external things, the further we get from our true, unshakable identity. The external is actually concealing the internal. Now, let's look at part three, why darkness and the flood. This brings us to probably the most counterintuitive part of this whole concept. Why does life have to get so incredibly hard for us to find out who we really are? The source texts use the term Mabul, which translates to the flood. But they aren't talking about a historical event here, it's a metaphor. It represents the overwhelming waves of daily struggles, the confusion, and the sheer hardship of life. And here's the secret. It is entirely designed to wash away our false dependencies. The wave is not a punishment. It's a necessary, targeted pressure that forces us to finally let go, to just stop gripping so tightly onto what other people think of us. So, how do we actually survive this flood? Well, first, the pressure of life builds up to an unbearable breaking point. Second, we finally break down and scream, I can't do this anymore. And listen, screaming, I can't do this is actually 50% of the spiritual work because it leads right into step 3. We surrender our tight grip on that anxious surviving child. We give up the illusion that we are in control. And once we finally let go, step 4 happens. Our resilient, true inner essence is finally revealed. And that leads us to this huge central truth. The concealment is purely for the sake of revelation. The darkness you're experiencing, it is not a dead end. When everything feels hidden and tough, that is the exact mechanism being used to reveal your hidden strength. The pressure of the wave is what literally forces you to drop those superficial layers and discover the indestructible core underneath.
Moving into part 4, releasing the surviving child within.
So how do we actually do this on, say, a random Tuesday afternoon? How do we build a practical guide for dealing with life's daily trials? Here are the practical mindset shifts you need to detach your self-worth from your environment. First, just notice when you feel highly offended. Catch yourself in the act. Second, recognize that this isn't the true you reacting. It's just the surviving child playing out an old childhood script. Third, remember that you are not your fear and you are not your anger. Fourth, realize you were never truly dependent on the person rejecting you, not for your breath, and certainly not for your ultimate survival. And finally, stop giving external opinions the power to define your existence. An insult only hurts if you falsely believe you need that person's approval to survive. Look, if you feel like you've spent your whole life caring way too much about what people think, I want you to remember this. There is absolutely no despair. It is never too late to repair your perspective. The source texts actually connect this to the concept of Pesach Sheni, or a second Passover, which spiritually represents the ultimate second chance. No matter how disconnected you feel right now, no matter how deep into the illusion you've wandered, you can always pivot inward. It's never, ever too late to change your identity.
And that takes us to our final section, part 5, connecting to the inner identity.
As we wrap up this explainer, let's define the ultimate goal of all this inner work. We are ultimately trying to reach the inner identity, which is often referred to in the sources as the godly soul. This is the secure, deeply independent core of who you are. This part of you requires absolutely zero external validation to exist, to matter, or to thrive. Once we strip away all the anxieties of the surviving child, we aren't left with emptiness. We're left with this inner essence that is completely 100% resilient to life's chaos. And the power of this inner essence is just incredible. It remains completely unaffected by social rejection. It doesn't even flinch when someone criticizes you. Secondly, it thrives in the dark just as well as it does in the light. It doesn't need perfect sunny conditions to be at peace. And lastly, it actively transforms painful trials into tools for self-discovery. Living from this identity acts as an absolute, impenetrable shield against the opinions of the world. You literally move from just surviving to truly being. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to take with you today. When the next wave of hardship hits, will you desperately cling to the opinions of others, or will you let the wave reveal who you truly are? The choice is entirely yours. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you use your next trial as a genuine opportunity for total liberation.